The plasma bolt missed Kira Voss by 3 centimeters, close enough to singe the hair at her temple and leave the acrid smell of ozone burning in her nostrils. She pressed herself against the crystalline wall of the diplomatic compound, heart hammering against her ribs as alien voices chittered in pursuit behind her. Stupid, 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 she whispered through gritted teeth, clutching the data pad that had started this whole mess. At 17, she was supposed to be learning orbital mechanics and xenobiology aboard the human research station, not stealing classified intelligence from the Vrextai Empire's most secure installation. But then as he'd seen the files, the corridor ahead split into 3 directions, each glowing with the bioluminescent fungi that the Vrextai used for lighting. She chose the middle path, sprinting on silent feet across the spongy organic flooring. Behind her, the chittering grew louder, more voices joining the hunt. 20 minutes ago, she'd been just another human teenager on a cultural exchange program, dutifully following Ambassador Hendrick's tour group through the Vrextai capital world of Nexus Prime. The Empire had been humanity's tentative ally for 3 years now, ever since first contact had gone surprisingly well. Unlike the horror stories from Earth's entertainment feeds, the insectoid Vrextai had proven diplomatic, curious about human culture, and eager to trade. The eager, as it turned out, Kira had always been too clever for her own good, a trait that had gotten her kicked out of 2 schools and nearly arrested for hacking the Mumbai Traffic Authority's drone network. When she'd noticed the security gap in the compound's data systems, curiosity had overridden common sense. She'd only meant to take a quick look, maybe impress her Xenotech instructor with some insider knowledge about Vrextai computing architecture. Instead, she'd uncovered Project Harvest. The data scrolled through her mind in horrifying detail: shipping manifests for human settlements, population surveys, genetic compatibility studies. The Vrextai weren't interested in trade partnerships. They were cataloging humanity like livestock. The documents spoke of optimal breeding populations and protein yield calculations with the cold precision of an abattoir planning its next shipment. Worse, they weren't alone. The files referenced 13 other species already processed through the harvest protocols. Entire civilizations reduced to breeding stock and food resources. Their homeworld stripped bare and converted into Vrextai hive farms. A section of wall ahead of her irisid opened with a wet sound, and 3 Vrextai soldiers skittered through. Each stood nearly 3 meters tall, their chitinous exoskeletons gleaming black-green under the bio-light. Compound eyes fixed on her with predatory focus, while mandibles clicked in what she now recognized as anticipation rather than communication. Kira dove sideways into an alcove, narrowly avoiding the neural disruptor beam that would have left her paralyzed and drooling. Her fingers flew over the data pad's interface, uploading everything to the quantum transmitter hidden in her jacket's lining. If she was going to die here, at least the human fleet would learn the truth. Human lava. One of the Vrextai called in heavily accented standard. You have access forbidden knowledge. Submit for processing, and your death will be swift. Processing? Kira laughed, high and sharp with hysteria. You mean like you processed the Kelthani? The Doron? How many species have you murdered, you insects? The Vrextai soldier's head tilted, mandibles spreading in what might have been surprise. You understand. This is unfortunate. The deception was preferable to premature harvest. Kira's blood turned to ice. Premature. Human populations have not yet reached optimal density. Your species was scheduled for processing in 15 of your years. This complication may require acceleration of the timeline. The upload progress bar on her pad hit 100%, just as more Vrextai poured into the corridor from both directions. Kira smiled grimly and triggered the emergency beacon that would alert every human ship within 50 light years. She'd wanted to see the galaxy, to explore strange new worlds like the heroes in the old stories. She'd never imagined that her teenage stupidity would be the match. That little war between civilizations. The neural disruptor hit her square in the chest. A darkness claimed her as the first human distress signal screamed across space, carrying news that would ignite the galaxy in flames. Captain Morgan Blackthorne received the distress signal 3 hours into what should have been a routine patrol of the Kepler sector. The bridge of the UES Defiant fell silent as Kira's desperate transmission played through the comm system, her voice crackling with quantum static, and punctuated by the wet clicking of Vrextai voices. Project Harvest. 13 species already processed. They're farming us, breeding stock. The transmission cut to screaming, then static. Blackthorn's knuckles were white against his command chair's armrests. Around him, the bridge crew exchanged grim looks. They'd all seen the classified reports about missing colonies, the ones officially attributed to navigation errors and equipment failures. Now they knew better. Nav, set course for Nexus. Prime, maximum burn. He ordered. Comms, give me Admiral Chan on priority channel. Weapons, ready all tubes. And Captain, interrupted Lieutenant Yamamoto from the sensor station. We're detecting multiple Vrextai vessels dropping out of FTL. Vector suggests they're heading for the human colonies in the Arcturus system. The tactical display bloomed with red contact 12 Vrextai bioships, each one a kilometer-long nightmare of grown bone and weaponized organs. Against them, Blackthorn had his destroyer and whatever human vessels could respond in time. They're moving fast, he muttered. Signal the colonies, full evacuation order. Then get me every ship in the sector. 20 minutes later, 5 human vessels hung in space between the Vrextai fleet and the helpless colony ships. Streaming away from Arcturus Prime, the odds were terrible. 12 bioships against 2 destroyers, a cruiser, and 2 frigates. But Blackthorn had been fighting impossible odds since the Titan Rebellion, and he learned that humans had advantages that didn't show up on tactical displays. All ships. This is Blackthorn. We hold here until the last civilian clears the system. Make every shot count and show these bugs what happens when they threaten our families. The Vrextai fleet opened fire first, spewing streams of bioplasma that turned space into a deadly light show. The human formation scattered, using their superior acceleration to avoid the worst of the barrage, while their kinetic cannons and missile arrays answered with precise, devastating volleys. The frigate Wolverine died first, her hull splitting open like an overripe fruit when a plasma stream found her reactor. But her sacrifice wasn't in vain. Her final missile salvo punched through a bioship's chitinous armor and detonated in its neural core, sending it tumbling dead through space. Target their weapon clusters, Blackthorn ordered, watching his tactical display as the human ships danced through the killing field. They can regrow armor, but those biocannons take time to mature. The Defiant's main battery spoke in thunder, sending depleted uranium slugs at a significant fraction of light speed into the nearest bioship. The alien vessel's hull erupted in geysers of ichor, an atmosphere, its bioplasma cannons withering like poison flowers. But the Vrextai adapted. Quickly, their formation shifted, bioships pairing off to provide overlapping fields of fire while smaller fighter organisms swarmed. From their launch bays like angry hornets, the human squadron found itself surrounded, outgunned, and running low on ammunition. The cruiser Intrepid took a direct hit to her command section. Her bridge crew vaporized in an instant. She continued fighting on auxiliary control for another 3 minutes, before a second bioship carved her in half with a sustained plasma beam. Captain, Yamamoto called out. Colony ship Aurora reports engine failure. She's falling behind the evacuation convoy. Blackthorn's jaw clenched. The Aurora carried 15,000 civilians, families, children, people who had never asked to be caught in an alien war. Behind them, the Vrextai fleet was pressing forward, the remaining bioships bleeding atmosphere. An ichor, but still deadly. Helmsman, intercept course for the Aurora. All ships, cover us. The Defiant broke from the formation, her engine screaming as she accelerated toward the struggling colony ship. Plasma fire bracketed her hull, close enough to boil away armor plating and send secondary explosions rippling through her. Corridors, damage report. Blackthorn ordered as the ship shuddered around him. Port weapons array is offline. Artificial gravity is failing on decks 7 through 12, and we've lost 3 fusion reactors, came the reply from the damaged control station. But the engines are holding. The Aurora limped ahead of them, her massive bulk vulnerable and helpless. The Vrextai bioships had broken off from the main fleet to pursue her, sensing easy prey. They closed rapidly, bioplasma cannons charging. With malevolent light, Blackthorn didn't hesitate, ramming speed, all power to forward shields. The Defiant screamed through space like a kinetic missile, her depleted uranium nose cone gleaming with deadly intent. The lead bioship tried to evade, but human engineering had always prioritized acceleration over grace. The destroyer struck the alien vessel amidships, punching through chitin and bone to detonate her remaining missiles in the creature's neural center. Both ships died in fire and vacuum, but the Aurora's engines finally caught, carrying her and her precious cargo to safety. The last thing Blackthorn saw before the reactor breached was the distant flash of human Reinforcements dropping out of FTL, led by Admiral Chen's dreadnought Vengeance. The war had begun in earnest now, and humanity would not go gentle into that dark harvest. 6 months after the Battle of Arcturus, Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the ruins of New Geneva, watching smoke rise from what had once been humanity's proudest colony. The BlackHFY had come in force, this time 50 bioship supported by swarms of fighter organisms that had overwhelmed the system's defenses in less than 4 hours. They hadn't bothered with subtlety, where once the aliens had played at diplomacy while secretly cataloging human settlements. Now they struck with the efficiency of exterminators. Plasma fire had turned cities to glass, while specialized harvester organisms swept through the rubble to collect anything useful, including the survivors. Casualty report, Chen requested, her voice carefully controlled. Colonel Vasquez consulted his tablet, his scarred face grim. 2.3 million dead, another 800,000 missing. The harvester ships lifted off before we could intercept them. Missing. It was a euphemism that fooled no one. Intelligence reports from captured BlackHFY facilities painted a horrific picture of humanity's fate under the Empire's processing protocols. The lucky ones died quickly in the breeding pens. The unlucky ones lived long enough to birth the next generation of human livestock. Chen's hands clenched into fists. Status of the fleet: 73 ships operational, another 22 under repair. We're holding them at 4 to 7 systems, but they're pressing hard on the outer rim colonies. Admiral Petrov estimates we have 6 months before they reach Earth itself. 6 months against an enemy that controlled half the galaxy and viewed humanity as nothing more than a particularly troublesome crop to be harvested. The mathematics were stark. The BlackHFY Empire fielded over 3,000 bioships, supported by countless billions of warrior drones and worker organisms. Humanity could barely scrape together 100 vessels, most of them converted civilian craft armed with whatever weapons the shipyards could manufacture. "Ma'am," interrupted Lieutenant Foster from the communications station, "we're receiving a transmission from the prison facility. The BlackHFY want to negotiate." Chen's laugh was bitter. "Negotiate what? Better harvesting schedules?" The main screen flickered to life, revealing the nightmare visage of Hive Commander Scritai, the BlackHFY military leader responsible for the New Geneva massacre. Its compound eyes glittered with alien intelligence while mandibles clicked in. "What passed for speech among its kind, Admiral Chen?" the creature said in its synthetic voice, each word carefully modulated by translation software. "Your resistance has been noted. The Empire offers terms." "Terms?" Chen stepped closer to the screen, her voice dripping with contempt. "You murdered 2 million civilians. You're turning my people into breeding stock. What terms could you possibly offer? Surrender within 10 rotations, and the Empire will designate Earth as a preserved world. Your species will be maintained in comfort, allowed natural reproduction cycles. Those who cooperate will receive enhanced nutrition and medical care. A zoo," Chen said flatly. "You're offering to keep us in a zoo." Scritai, head tilted in what might have been agreement. "Your species shows unusual resilience. The Empire has decided humanity possesses valuable genetic markers. Cooperation ensures preservation, continued resistance ensures extinction." Chen thought of the reports from liberated facilities, humans in cages barely large enough to stand, their minds broken by neural conditioning, their bodies modified for optimal protein production. The preserved world would be the same fate, just wrapped in prettier packaging. "Counteroffer," she said, smiling without warmth. "You withdraw from human space, release our people, and maybe we'll let you live long enough to regret starting this war." The BlackHFY commander's mandibles spread wide, revealing rows of serrated teeth. "Primitive aggression. The Empire has processed 13 species, Admiral. None possessed your arrogance. Perhaps this trait will prove useful in the breeding programs." The transmission cut to static. Chen turned to her staff, seeing her own determination reflected in their faces. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and facing an enemy that had conquered half the galaxy. But they were also human, and humans had never been particularly good at accepting impossible odds. Colonel Vasquez began implementing Protocol 7. Every military installation, every shipyard, every ammunition depot, wire them all for destruction. "If we can't hold a system, we burn it down, ma'am," Foster said hesitantly. Protocol 7 includes civilian infrastructure, the agricultural worlds, the mining colonies. "I know what it includes, Lieutenant. The BlackHFY want to harvest us, then we make sure there's nothing left to harvest." Chen's voice carried the weight of command and the burden of necessity. Better to die free than live as livestock. The orders went out across human space within the hour, as HFY fleets pressed deeper into the colonial territories. They found only ash and ruin. Human defenders fought with the desperation of cornered animals, making the aliens pay dearly for every world. When positions became untenable, the humans triggered fusion charges that turned their own cities into radioactive craters. The HFY had expected conquest. Instead, they found themselves grinding through a meat grinder of human spite and determination. For every world they claimed, they lost dozens of bioships to suicide attacks, booby-trap facilities, and human crews who rammed their vessels into alien formations rather than surrender, but the mathematics remained unchanged. Humanity was dying by degrees, trading territory for time while the HFY Empire adapted to their tactics. The aliens had conquered 13 civilizations before. They had learned patience. In her command bunker beneath the ruins of Luna City, Admiral Chen studied the tactical displays and wondered if this was how all the other species had felt in their final days. Brave, defiant, and utterly doomed, the war was entering its most desperate phase, and she had one last card to play. It was insane, suicidal, and would likely fail spectacularly, but it was also the most human thing she could imagine. She reached for the secure communicator that would initiate Operation Lazarus. Deep beneath the ice of Europa, Dr. Elena Vasquez worked by the light of emergency power strips, her hands steady despite the constant vibration of orbital bombardment above. The HFY had been pounding the Jovian system for 3 days straight, their bioships reducing humanity's outer settlements to rubble, while Admiral Chen's depleted fleet fought a desperate delay in action. But Elena wasn't concerned with the battle raging in vacuum. Her attention was focused entirely on the 17-year-old girl, lying unconscious in the medical pod before her, neural interface cables snaking from her skull like metallic hair. Kira Voss, the teenager whose curiosity had triggered this galactic holocaust, had been comatose for 8 months since her rescue from the HFY prison complex. Physical recovery had been relatively simple. Regrowing missing fingers and repairing damaged organs was routine for human medical technology. Mental recovery was proving more complex. The neural pathways are still fragmented. Elena murmured to her assistant, Dr. Marcus Webb, the HFY. Interrogation techniques were designed to extract information while preserving basic brain function, but they never intended their subjects to recover. Webb adjusted the scanning parameters, frowning at the holographic display of Kira's brain activity. What makes you think she can be repaired at all? The quantum resonance patterns are completely chaotic. Elena smiled grimly, because she's human, Marcus, and humans are very good at surviving impossible trauma. She paused, then added quietly, plus, Admiral Chen needs her functional. Operation Lazarus depends on it. Operation Lazarus, the most desperate gambit in human military history. While the HFY ground through humanity's outer defenses, Chen had been secretly developing a weapon that would either save the species or damn them all. The plan required someone with intimate knowledge of HFY neural architecture, someone who had survived their interrogation techniques long enough to understand how their collective consciousness functioned. Someone like Kira Voss. Beginning neural stimulation sequence, Elena announced, her fingers dancing over the control interface. If this works, she should regain consciousness within the hour. If it doesn't, she'll be a vegetable for the rest of her short life. Webb finished, along with the rest of us. Once the HFY finished processing this system, the medical base shuddered as another plasma bombardment struck Europa's surface, sending cascades of ice and rock tumbling into the excavated caverns. Somewhere above them, human ships were dying in the vacuum, their crews fighting to buy just a few more hours for Elena's work. The neural stimulation reached critical resonance, and Kira's eyes snapped open, where she gasped, struggling against the medical restraints before Elena could calm her. The files, the data, did it get through? Did they know about the harvest? Easy, Kira, Elena said gently. You've been unconscious for 8 months. Yes, the data got through. That's why we're all fighting for our lives right now. Kira's face crumpled as memory returned. The compound, the chase, the horrifying revelation that humanity was nothing more than livestock to the HFY Empire. Then her expression hardened with resolve that seemed far too old for her 17 years. What do you need me to do? Elena and Webb exchanged glances. The girl's neural patterns were stabilizing faster than they dared hope, the damaged sapses rebuilding themselves with typical human stubbornness. But what they were about to ask of her, we need you to go back inside their network, Elena said carefully, not physically through a quantum interface link. Admiral Chen believes there's a way to turn the VREX's collective consciousness against itself, but we need someone who understands their neural architecture from the inside. Kira was quiet for a long moment, processing the implications. The VREX interrogation had been 8 months of exquisite torture. Her mind flayed open while alien consciousness probed her memories. To voluntarily submit to that connection again, it'll kill me, won't it? She asked quietly. Webb started to protest, but Elena cut him off with a gesture. The girl deserved honesty, probably. The quantum resonance feedback will likely cause massive neural trauma, even if you survive. There's a significant chance of permanent brain damage. Another impact shook the facility, and the lights flickered. Ominously, somewhere in the distance, emergency klaxons wailed as another section of the complex suffered catastrophic decompression. Kira sat up slowly, pulling the interface cables from her skull with steady hands. Show me the technical specifications. If I'm going to die for this, I want to understand exactly how it's supposed to work. For the next 3 hours, while the battle raged overhead and human civilization teetered on the brink of extinction, Elena and her team explained Operation Lazarus to a 17-year-old girl who had already sacrificed more for her species than most adults could imagine. The plan was audacious in its simplicity. The VREX Empire's greatest strength was also its greatest weakness. Their bioships, warrior drones, and even individual VREX were all connected through quantum entangled neurons that allowed for instantaneous communication across galactic distances. It was this network that had enabled their conquest of 13 civilizations. But networks could be hacked. The viral program will propagate through their quantum consciousness like a biological infection, Elena explained, highlighting the relevant code structures. Once it reaches critical mass, it should cause systematic neural collapse across their entire collective. Genocide, Kira said flatly. Yes, Elena admitted, complete and total extinction of the VREX species. Every individual connected to their network will die within minutes. Kira studied the data for another hour while the bombardment intensified above them. Finally, she looked up at Elena with eyes that had seen too much for someone so young. When do we start? The neural interface connection took another 4 hours to establish, complicated by the need for triple redundancy and quantum shielding to prevent premature detection. As Elena worked, reports filtered down from the surface. Admiral Chen's fleet was taking horrific casualties. The orbital defense platforms were failing one by one, and VREX landing forces had begun their assault on Europa's ice-lock facilities. Time was running out for humanity, and their salvation rested in the hands of a teenager who had already paid the higher price. For their survival, Kira settled into the interface chair, her face pale, but determined as Elena began the final connection sequence. The last thing she said before the quantum link activated was barely a whisper. If this works, remember that it started with a curious kid who couldn't leave well enough alone. Then the network claimed her, and humanity's fate hung in the balance. Admiral Chen watched her fleet die around her as the final VREX assault reached its crescendo. The bridge of the UES Indomitable shook with each impact, the massive dreadnoughts, armor plating boiling away under sustained plasma bombardment. Through the tactical display, she could see the mathematics of extinction playing out in real time. 73 human ships had entered the Battle of Europa, 18 remained. 73 human ships had entered the Battle of Europa, 18 remained. Fusion torpedo spread, bearing 27 Mark IV, she ordered, her voice cutting through the chaos of combat. Reports and damage assessments, all batteries, focus fire on the Hive Command vessel. The Indomitable's weapons spoke with thunder, sending streams of kinetic death and fusion fire toward the massive bioship that served as Scritia's flagship. The alien vessel absorbed the punishment with horrible resilience, its living hull regenerating even as weapons fire carved through chitin and bone around them. The void had become a charnel house of burning metal and flash-frozen atmosphere. The destroyer Valiant hung dead in space, her crew lost when a plasma lance punched through her reactor core. The cruiser Wellington tumbled slowly past the Indomitable's viewports, her hull split open like a dissected insect, bodies floating in her wake like ghosts. Admiral, called Commander Torres from the damage control station. We've lost main engineering. Secondary reactors are running at 30% efficiency, and the port weapons array is completely offline. Chen nodded grimly. The Indomitable was dying by degrees, her crew fighting to buy every possible second for Dr. Vasquez's desperate gambit. Somewhere beneath Europa's ice, Kira Voss was attempting the impossible hacking into the quantum consciousness of an entire species while their warriors reduced humanity's last fleet to scrap metal. Signal from the Thermopylae, Torres continued. Captain Rodriguez reports critical damage to his command section. He's requesting permission to implement Protocol 7. Chen closed her eyes briefly. Protocol 7 ramming speed. Captain Rodriguez and his 300 crew members were volunteering to die, trading their lives for the chance to cripple one more enemy vessel. It was a calculus that had become all too familiar. During humanity's desperate stand, permission granted. Tell Rodriguez his sacrifice will be remembered. The heavy cruiser Thermopylae broke from the human formation, her engine screaming as she accelerated toward the nearest bioship. Vrexi plasma fire concentrated on her, trying to destroy the vessel before she could complete her suicide run. But Rodriguez's crew had routed all power to forward shields and structural reinforcement, turning their ship into a kinetic missile weighing 50,000 tons. The impact was spectacular. The Thermopylae struck the bioship just after its neural center, her depleted uranium nose cone punching through alien flesh like a lance through an apple. Both vessels vanished in a brief star of nuclear fire, taking Rodriguez and his crew along with 6,000 Vrexi warriors. Confirmed kill on bioship designation 7, reported Lieutenant Hayes from the tactical station, but we're detecting massive reinforcements dropping out of FTL, another 40 vessels, including 3 Hive command ships. Chen felt the weight of command settle on her shoulders like a shroud. 40 more bioships, each one crewed by thousands of warriors bred for conquest. Against them, she had fewer than 20 damaged human vessels running low on ammunition and hope. But humans had never been particularly good at accepting defeat. All ships, this is Admiral Chen. We are outnumbered, outgunned, and facing extinction. The enemy expects us to surrender, to go quietly into their harvesting pens like the 13 species before us. She paused, letting her words carry across the fleet tactical network. They don't understand that humans would rather burn the galaxy down than live as slaves. The response was immediate streams of acknowledgement from every surviving vessel, each captain and crew ready to die rather than submit to processing. The destroyer Defiance, her hull holed in a dozen places, turned toward the enemy formation with weapons blazing. The frigates Moscow and Cairo flanked her, their fusion torpedoes carving bright paths through the void. The Vrexi responded with overwhelming firepower, bioships disgorging swarms of fighter organisms while their plasma cannons turned space into a deadly light show. The frigate Moscow died first, her magazines detonating in a chain reaction that sent shockwaves rippling through the battle zone. The Cairo lasted another 30 seconds before a direct hit to her command section left her drifting powerless, but the human attack had drawn the aliens forward, bringing them into range of Europa's orbital defense platforms. The massive weapons, emplacements each one the size of a city block, opened fire with graviton cannons. At a time matter warheads, 3 bioships died in the first salvo, their organic hulls unable to withstand humanity's most devastating weapons. The battle had become a slugging match, both sides trading devastating blows while the casualty count climbed toward the hundreds of thousands. Chen watched her tactical display with professional detachment, noting the patterns of engagement. The gradual shift in momentum as fresh Vrexi reinforcements joined the fray. Admiral Hayes called out, his voice tight with stress. The defense platforms are reporting critical damage. Platform 7 is offline. Platform 3 has lost primary power, and Platform 1 is running low on antimatter. Chen nodded, unsurprised. The orbital defenses had been designed to repel conventional attacks, not the sustained assault of 50 bioships. They'd held longer than anyone had a right to expect. But even human engineering had its limits. Signaled Dr. Vasquez, she ordered. Whatever she's doing down there, she needs to do it faster. We can't hold much longer. As if summoned by her words, a new wave of bioships dropped out of FTL at the edge of the system. 60 more vessels, their living hulls gleaming with predatory hunger. The mathematics were final now. Humanity's last fleet would be overwhelmed within the hour. Chen looked around her bridge, seeing her reflection in the faces of her crew. Young men and women who should have been exploring the galaxy, falling in love, raising families. Instead, they were dying in the vacuum, buying time with their lives for a species that might not survive the next day. All hands, "This is the Admiral," she announced over the ship's intercom. "It's been an honor serving with you. Make them pay for every meter of space, every second of time. Show these aliens what it means to fight humanity." The Indomitable's guns roared their defiance at the stars. 3 kilometers beneath Europa's fractured ice, HFY screamed. The neural interface burned through her consciousness like molten metal, each synaptic connection a point of agony as her human mind struggled to process the alien architecture of the HFY collective. She could feel them billions of interconnected consciousness spread across the galaxy, their thoughts flowing like poisonous honey through quantum-entangled neurons. "Neural activity is off the charts," Dr. Vasquez reported, her voice tight with concern as she monitored Kira's vital signs. "Her brain is literally burning itself out trying to maintain the connection." "Can she complete the upload?" asked Dr. Webb, his hands hovering over the emergency disconnect. Around them, the medical facility shuddered under another orbital bombardment, emergency lighting casting everything in hellish red shadows. Elena checked the progress indicators, her heart sinking at what she saw. 17%. The viral program is propagating, but slowly. At this rate, she'll be dead long before it reaches critical mass. Through the quantum link, Kira could sense the vast scope of the HFY empire. Hive worlds teemed with billions of worker drones, their minds locked into collective purpose. Bioships grew in orbital nurseries, their living hulls shaped by genetic templates perfected over millennia of conquest. And beneath it all, the cold intelligence of the Hive Mothers, ancient minds that had directed the consumption of 13 civilizations. She pushed deeper into the network, ignoring the feedback that sent lightning through her nervous system. The viral program was working. She could see its digital pathways, spreading through the quantum consciousness like an infection. But the HFY were beginning to notice the intrusion, their security protocols activating to isolate compromised nodes. "Human Lavi," a voice whispered through the connection. "Ancient and implacable, you damage yourself for nothing. The Empire is eternal." Kira found herself face to face with Hive Mother Tracthal, one of the founding intelligences of the HFY civilization. The alien mind appeared as a vast web of interconnected thoughts, each strand representing centuries of accumulated knowledge and malice. "Your species will be processed efficiently," the Hive Mother continued. "The harvest has been delayed, but cannot be prevented. Already your fleets die above this world." Through the quantum link, Kira could see the battle raging in Europa's orbit. Admiral Chen's fleet was taking horrific casualties, human ships dying, one by one as the HFY pressed their overwhelming advantage. She watched the destroyer Galactic ram a bioship in a burst of nuclear fire, her crew trading their lives for a few more minutes of time. 20-7%, she noted, checking the viral program's progress. Still not enough. At this rate, the last human ships would be destroyed before the weapon could achieve critical mass. "You understand," Tracthal observed, following Kira's thoughts. "Your sacrifice is meaningless. The Empire will continue, as it has for 10,000 years." Kira laughed, the sound echoing strangely through the quantum connection. "You know what your problem is. You've been harvesting civilization so long. You've forgotten what it means to fight one." She reached deeper into her own memories, past the trauma of her capture and interrogation, back to the moment that had started everything. A curious teenager, poking around in systems she had no business accessing, driven by nothing more than human stubbornness and the need to understand. The HFY had mastered conquest, but they'd never learned to appreciate chaos. Kira began rewriting the viral program on the fly, her human creativity warring against millions of years of insectoid evolution, where the original weapon had been designed for systematic propagation. She introduced randomness, chaotic elements that would make the infection harder to isolate, and contained 30-8%. The Hive Mother's attention sharpened, alien intelligence focusing on Kira's modifications, clever but inadequate. "The Empire's security protocols were designed by minds like yours," Kira interrupted. "Logical, systematic, predictable. You've never had to deal with a 17-year-old human with too much curiosity and nothing left to lose." She pushed harder into the network, accepting the neural feedback that left her biological systems on the verge of shutdown. Through the medical facility's speakers, she could hear Dr. Vasquez shouting about cardiac arrest and neural collapse, but it all seemed distant and unimportant. What mattered was the numbers slowly climbing on her interface display. 51%. The viral weapon had achieved critical mass. All across the galaxy, Vrextai bioships began to convulse as the infection spread through their living neural networks. In the orbit of Europa, Hive Commander Skridai watched in horror as his flagship's control systems went haywire, weapons firing randomly while navigation protocols collapsed into chaos. Impossible. Tracthyl transmitted, her ancient mind reeling. As the infection reached even the Hive Mothers themselves, the collective cannot be compromised. We are eternal. Nothing's eternal, Kira replied, feeling her human body failing even as her consciousness expanded through the quantum network. Everything dies eventually, even empires. The viral program reached full propagation. 97% of all Vrextai neural networks infected simultaneously. The effect was instantaneous and devastating. Across the galaxy, billions of Vrextai minds suddenly found themselves disconnected from their collective consciousness that had defined their species for millennia. Worker drones collapsed in their hive cities. Their purpose-driven existence shattered without the guiding intelligence of their superiors. Bioships tumbled dead through space as their living neural networks seized and died. Even the ancient Hive Mothers, their vast intelligences sustained by quantum entanglement with countless subordinate minds, felt the infection eating through their consciousness like acid. In Europa's orbit, Admiral Chen watched in amazement as the Vrextai fleet simply stopped. Bioships that had been pouring devastating fire into her formation moments before now drifted powerless, their weapons silent and their navigation systems dark. Admiral, Lieutenant Hayes called out, his voice filled with wonder. We're detecting massive system failures across the entire enemy fleet. Their bioships are going dark one by one. Chen allowed herself a moment of hope. Any response to our hail attempts? Nothing, ma'am. It's like they're all dead. Through the quantum link, Kira felt the Empire's death throes as an ocean of alien minds went silent. The Vrextai collective consciousness, 10,000 years of accumulated knowledge, culture, and malice dissolved into digital noise and random static. She had done it. She had committed genocide on a galactic scale, wiping out an entire species with nothing more than human ingenuity and the willingness to sacrifice everything. You have doomed us all, Tracthyl whispered, her ancient voice fading. As the infection consumed her neural pathways, without the Empire, the galaxy will fall to chaos. Pirates, raiders, worst things than we ever were, maybe, Kira admitted, feeling her own consciousness beginning to fragment as the neural feedback finally overwhelmed her human brain. But at least it'll be their choice. Nobody deserves to be livestock. The Hive Mother's presence vanished into static, leaving Kira alone in the vast emptiness of a dead network. She tried to disconnect from the quantum interface, but the damage was too severe. Her neural pathways were burning out one by one. The price of touching an alien mind too large for human neurology to bear. She thought of her parents, probably dead in some Vrextai processing facility, of Captain Blackthorn and his crew, who had died defending the Aurora, of all the humans who had fought and sacrificed to buy her this moment of connection. With the enemy network, at least their deaths had meaning now. Kira Voss, age 17, closed her eyes and let the quantum static claim her consciousness. 5 years after the Battle of Europa, Admiral Chen stood in the Memorial Garden on New Titan, watching the sun set through the transparent aluminum dome that protected the growing city from the harsh vacuum of space. Around her, families walked among the memorial stones, reading names of the dead and leaving flowers that would never wither in the artificial atmosphere. She paused before a simple black stone, its surface engraved with words that had become humanity's unofficial motto: nobody deserves to be livestock. Below that, a single name, Kira Voss, to 387-404. The girl who had triggered a galactic war and ended it with a word. Thought I'd find you here, said a familiar voice behind her. Chen turned to see Dr. Elena Vasquez approaching, her hair now streaked with premature gray from the stress of the war years. In her hands, she carried a data pad displaying the latest reports from the reclamation fleet. How many today? Chen asked quietly. Another 300,000 from the Kepler system facilities, Elena replied. Most are in reasonable physical condition, but the psychological damage. She shook her head. Some of them have been in processing for decades. They don't remember what it means to be human. Chen nodded grimly. The aftermath of humanity's victory had proven almost as challenging as the war itself. With the Vrextai collective consciousness destroyed, their vast empire had collapsed overnight. Billions of bioships drifted dead through space, their living hulls slowly decomposing in the vacuum. Hive worlds that had teemed with alien life went silent, leaving only automated systems and the occasional survivor driven mad by the sudden isolation. But the Empire's victims had survived, scattered across thousands of worlds, humans and members of 13 other species had been found at various stages of the processing protocols. Some were in relatively good condition, maintained as breeding stock in comfortable facilities. Others had been subjected to genetic modification, surgical alteration, or neural conditioning that left them barely recognizable as sentient beings. The reclamation fleet had been working for 5 years to find and rescue these survivors, but the task was vast. The Rextai Empire had controlled nearly half the galaxy, and every system held the potential for hidden facilities, filled with the processed remains of conquered civilizations. Any word from the Deep Scouts? Chen asked. Elena consulted her data pad. The Magellan reached the Rextai home system last week. Captain Morrison reports the homeworld is dead, completely lifeless. Apparently, when the collective consciousness collapsed, the planetary ecosystem couldn't survive without the neural network that had been regulating it for millennia. Chen wasn't surprised. The Rextai had been as much a product of their biotechnology as its masters. When Kira's virus had severed the quantum connections that bound their civilization together, the entire species had died within hours, not just the individuals, but their living ships, their organic cities, even their carefully cultivated biosphere. It was, by any measure, the most successful genocide in galactic history, and it had been committed by a 17-year-old girl who had just wanted to see what was behind a locked door. She's still alive, you know, Elena said quietly, following Chen's gaze to Kira's memorial stone. Chen raised an eyebrow. The report said neural collapse, complete brain death. The reports were wrong. Elena's voice carried a mixture of guilt and wonder. Her body died, yes, but her consciousness. When she interfaced with the Rextai network, part of her got caught in the quantum entanglement. She's been living in the network ruins for 5 years, helping us locate survivor facilities. The revelation hit Chen like a physical blow. You've been talking to her all this time. Not talking, exactly. More like receiving data packets, coordinates, facility layouts, security protocols. She's been guiding the reclamation fleet, helping us find people who would have died in their processing cells otherwise. Chen stared at the memorial stone, her mind reeling. Is she still human? Elena was quiet for a long moment, considering the question. I don't know. She's something new, something that's never existed before. Part human consciousness, part quantum data construct, part ghost in a dead machine. But she's still helping people, still fighting for the freedom she bought with her life. A soft chime from Elena's data pad interrupted their conversation. She glanced at the display, then smiled. Another message. The Endeavor found a processing facility in the Vega. System 12,000 survivors, including some humans from the original colonies. They're requesting immediate medical support. Chen nodded, already making mental calculations about shipping schedules and resource allocation. The work would continue for decades, maybe centuries, but every rescued survivor was a victory against the darkness that had nearly consumed them all. As they walked back toward the city, Elena's data pad chimed again. This time, instead of coordinates or facility layouts, it displayed a simple text message. Tell Admiral Chen, the galaxy is free. Nobody has to be livestock anymore. That's enough for me. Chen stopped walking, staring at the message until Elena's pad went dark. Somewhere in the quantum foam that connected the stars, the ghost of a curious teenager continued her work, freeing the enslaved and healing the wounded with a dedication that had triggered a war and saved the galaxy. The memorial garden grew, quiet as the artificial sun set behind them, casting long shadows across the stones that bore the names of humanity's heroes. They had fought impossible odds and won at a terrible price, but the victory was complete. Never again would any species face the horror of the harvest. In the quantum static between the stars, Kira Voss smiled and got back to work. There were still people to save, and she had all the time in the universe to find them. The galaxy was free, in memory of all those who fought against the darkness, and those who continue to fight for the freedom that was bought with blood and sacrifice. The stars remember. Inscription on the Memorial of Liberation, New Titan Colony, to 409,